Listen, everybody, if you missed that last section, you are going to want to watch the replay. But coming up next, we're not stopping with the awesomeness. We have our next speaker that's joining me on the stage, Dr. Jo. Welcome to WEN
Thank you
Talk.
so
We
much.
are so excited to see you
Thank you.
here.
I'm glad to be here.
And yeah, we can't wait to hear what you got for us. So I will go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to be talking about loving our body as it is and releasing body shame. I want to start with a few questions. How many of you love your body as it is right now? How many of you have ever loved your body? And when did you first become aware of your body not being quite right? What about the first time you became conscious of your body as a sexual object and then lost your ability to be carefree and childlike, to be embodied in your body? These are important things that we need to ask ourselves and reflect on as women and as human beings. If we think about it, beauty is a construct in our society, and we get to decide how we want to define beauty. So I'm encouraging all of us to reject societal standards of beauty and diet culture and release body shame and decide that what we see in the mirror is beauty. And how can we do this? Well, I've got some ideas today that I'll share with you. First, I want to share why this is important to me. When I was 12 years old, I was hospitalized for anorexia. At the time, I didn't know what eating disorders were. I just thought that I was crazy. When I was in treatment, I discovered that I was passionate about mental health disorders and also that I wanted to help people when I grew up. So that was a gift. I also learned that eating disorders, like all addictions and most mental health illnesses, are chronic. And I dealt with anorexia throughout most of my life. My most recent treatment was in 2009, 2010. And that was when recovery solidified for me. And a big part of that was yoga. So one day I went into the yoga body image class, and as I went into warrior two pose, I had this very profound thought. I don't have to loathe my body. And in that moment, I could feel the muscles in my legs. I could feel the breath in my lungs and the shoulders, the muscles in my shoulders. And it was so profound because I had been living from the neck up for so many years. I was embodied. And at that moment, I decided this is going to be my life. I am going to be back in my body. And I also decided I was going to become a yoga teacher. And the day after I left treatment, I started my yoga teacher training, the first of many trainings. So now I incorporate that in my coaching work. So we need to change our bodies. We think we need to only because society tells us to. Consider that in other countries, other cultures, large bodied women are considered the ideal. In part, that has to do with the availability of food. In societies where there is a lack of food, larger women are revered because they are the wealthy class. So it's just something to think about. And looking at our own history of the ideal body image, our first ideal body we could think of is the Willendorf woman who was carved, a 4-inch statue carved somewhere between 25,000 to 22,000 BCE. And she was very large in the hips, stomach, and belly. However, she had no face, so that's kind of interesting to think about. Then in ancient Greece, full hips and waist were ideal, as in the Renaissance era. During the Elizabethan era, around 1558, the paler you were in skin tone, the more beautiful you were, since a tan indicated that you worked outside. So wealthier women were careful to put on white powder to demonstrate their indoor lifestyle. They also wore red lipstick because that was said to be alluring and also ward off evil spirits, even death. Then in the Victorian era, around 1837, beautiful women were frail and weak looking. By the 1890s, women had large breasts, were pale again, and they wore corsets. In the 1920s, when women gained the right to vote, they started to have boyish bodies and cut their hair because they wanted more freedom. And then in the 50s, a curvier body, Marilyn Monroe, became popular. Then the ideal body image shrank in the 1960s, and for a specific reason. Women were gaining power in the workforce, and patriarchy was getting nervous. So, what better distraction than to shrink the ideal woman and explode the male owned diet and cosmetics industry so that women were busy beautifying themselves rather than taking over men's positions? We also need to understand eating disorders and disordered eating. So, at this moment, 9% of the American population has a diagnosable eating disorder, which includes anorexia, binge eating disorder, bulimia, ARFID, which is a refusal to eat certain foods and can be based on texture, or pica, which is eating non foods, which is very rare. There's also an eating disorder that isn't yet in the DSM, but it's called orthorexia, and that has to do with an obsession with eating clean foods um, and living a healthy lifestyle that gets out of hand. However, there are also disordered eating, and that's a full range of behaviors from eliminating food groups to crash dieting, taking laxatives, exercising after eating to, in a sense, get rid of the calories. And so many of us are on that spectrum of behaviors too that we really don't think about. And also consider, what would it be like to go through a day only thinking about food in a pleasurable way while we're actually in the process of enjoying food, rather than thinking about when we'll eat next and what we'll eat and how many calories we just consumed. This is not about saying that these behaviors are right or bad or wrong. This is just about heightening our awareness about this issue and increasing our mindfulness. Another thing to consider is BMI charts, which have so many of us on diets and worrying about our weight. The fact is, BMI charts are fairly ridiculous and were developed 200 years ago by a mathematician, not a physician. The math itself is also faulty, and the BMI charts fail to account for things like bone structure, fat versus muscles, individual differences, heredity, etc. Research also suggests that the danger of being overweight is vastly over exaggerated, and the danger of being underweight is minimized or ignored. The other thing about the charts is that insurance companies use them to charge higher BMI numbers more on their plans. I suggest that you request that your doctor not weigh you at every visit unless it's medically necessary. And also, you don't need to know the number if it causes you stress. That's your right. There's also a movement called Health at Every Size, which encourages acceptance of all body sizes and shapes rather than the blaming and shaming. So that's something to consider. Specific ideas to improve our body image include wearing comfortable and flattering clothes, buying things that feel good, avoiding media that makes us feel bad about our appearance, and gravitating towards things and putting things into our mind, into our soul that feels good and is nourishing. Putting post-it notes on our mirror, which is where we most often criticize ourselves. Things that say, you matter, you're beautiful, your body does not define your worth. Any kind of positive affirmation, and giving yourself positive affirmations throughout the day, or mantras that you can repeat throughout the day. I matter. This too shall pass. Anything that brings you comfort. Another thing is singing, using your voice. The vibrations that are created during singing bring comfort and stimulate the vagus nerve. nerve, which is also soothing to our nervous system. Also, notice what goes on around you. And if someone criticizes you or says something hurtful, be assertive. Speak up for yourself. And if someone makes a comment or judges another large bodied person, don't let it slide. Say something. Another thing that I recommend is something I call the mirror exercise. This may be difficult, so you can always work up to it or do certain parts of your body at a time. So after you get out of the shower, take some lotion that you really like that smells good and start in a in front of a full length mirror, if you have one. Start with your feet and apply the lotion to your feet, talking out loud to your feet, saying, "Thank you, feet, for being so loyal, for taking me from point A to point B, for helping me balance, for connecting me with the earth." And then you can move to your legs, applying the lotion. "Thank you, legs, for being so strong, for carrying me, for helping me, for transporting me from places, for traveling with me." Move on to the hips. "Thank you, hips, for being wide enough to carry children, for letting me be mobile, for being flexible." And then take some time at the belly because this is a problem area for a lot of women. Problem as in we struggle with accepting it. I was in a Sufi dance class and my teacher said something so meaningful to me, or to the class. She said, "In our culture, we think we need to have flat, hard abs." She said, "That's ridiculous. The belly is meant to have space and room because it not only digests food, but the material of life. And it's the creation of life. So why would you want to shrink it? It has to have space and room to move and breathe." So I always think of that. Allow room in your belly to digest not only food, but the material of life. So I love that. So spend time rubbing the lotion in the belly and just loving your belly. And continue on until you've completed the whole body. It's a very intimate practice to do with yourself, and it's very soothing and helpful to reclaiming your body. Another thing is embodiment, which I kind of touched on when I was doing yoga. So that is about being present and inhabited in your own body. And it involves interoception and proprioception. So interoception is the ability to notice the senses within you, such as your heartbeat, your hunger and fullness cues. And proprioception is about noticing the environment around you, such as your body moving in space. So ways to increase your embodiment are yoga. I mean, it's a great way because you're moving your body with breath. So it really gets you centered and grounded. Meditation. There are tons of different ways to meditate. That's one of the things I do is I teach a variety of different meditations along with the yoga and coaching. Somatic exercises. I also do some of that. There's somatic experiencing. There's also things like Reiki and other body work. That's very helpful. There's also spending times with family and friends, and specifically doing reflective listening. So a lot of times when we are with people, we are in our head having conversations. We're in our head preparing our response rather than being really present with the person and listening. So a way to practice this is really pay attention, eye contact, and then listen to the point where you can repeat what the person said. So you're listening to your friend and then you say, "Wow, so I heard you say that you're really struggling with getting along with your daughter and you're hoping that you can really increase the communication by working with a therapist." Something like that. And it may sound like you're kind of parroting things back, but I guarantee your friend is going to feel really heard and validated. So that's something you can try. Another thing is to connect to joy. Now, this is a direct relationship to how much you allow yourself to feel uncomfortable emotions. See, we have a certain emotional bandwidth, if you will, and if you only allow yourself a bit of space to feel the uncomfortable emotions before you suppress them or you know push away, similarly, you'll only be able to feel a little bit of the joy or happiness before you can't tolerate that. You may not realize that, but that's the case. So practice expanding your emotional range. And in terms of body shame, first we need to address what body shame or what shame is in general. So there's a difference between shame and guilt. Guilt is a helpful emotion because it allows you to shape your decisions. For example, if I steal a candy bar, I'm going to feel guilty because that doesn't align with my values. So I'm probably not going to do it again. Shame, on the other hand, is an irrational thing that is usually internalized by a child before the age of 5 or 7 when they don't have the perspective that everything around them is not about them. So, for example, my dad was an alcoholic. I'm sorry, is an alcoholic. And when I was young, I thought that that was my fault, that I could have done something to make him stop, and I didn't. So, the message I internalized was, I'm a bad kid. So, the rest of my life, I saw everything through that lens. Now, this is not about blaming my dad or anything like that. It's never about that. It's just about understanding the psyche and dynamics that play into things. So, ways to get rid of that internal child shame include things like being aware of the internal narrative. We all have a narrative going on all the time. So, becoming aware of that without judgment, just noticing it. Eventually, it may be working with a therapist or coach to reframe and start a new narrative. Also, doing things like looking at, because we all have the child part of ourselves, and each age that we were is still within us. So, take pictures of your child self or infant self when you're talking negatively to yourself, and then look at the baby picture and say, would I say that to this little innocent baby? You probably wouldn't. It makes it easier to be kind to yourself if you are looking at images of yourself as a kid. Also, remember the differences between guilt and shame. So when you feel really bad about who you are as a person, just remember you're not a bad person when you make a mistake. It's just a mistake, and kind of put things in perspective. Another thing that we need to talk about is the sexualization of the female body and sexual harassment. That plays a big part in body shame. So, acknowledging that and dealing with that and addressing it and putting the shame back where it belongs. I realize I'm running out of time. I have so much more to say, but if you want to hear more about this, and in summary, we can release our body shame that holds us back. We can learn to love our body and define beauty for ourselves. And know that all of us are divine beings having a human experience. I would love to share more about this. I have so much more to say. But if you want to learn more, have more opportunities to speak with me or attend workshops or holistic coaching and body positive yoga, my email is jo at tulasoul, TULASOUL.com. And my website is tulasoul.com. So TULASOUL.com. Thank you so much.
Wow. What a powerful message to have today, Joe, because I'm sorry, Dr. Joe,
Oh,
because
no, call me Joe.
I think we all have those moments or have had those moments or know people that have these moments. And it's really good to do little things, like you said, with putting the little sticky notes on the mirror as you brush your teeth,
Yep.
telling yourself really positive things. Yeah, the chat is saying thank you so much for this information because it's powerful
Yeah.
and it's moving. And thank you for your vulnerability. to even
Mhm.
share with us what you went through.
Okay.
Please connect with Dr. Joe at tulisol.com. Continue the conversation with her. If you or anybody that you know is struggling with any type of body shame, or feelings of insecurity because of what your body can and cannot do, or looks like, or doesn't look like, please connect with her. Dr. Joe, thank you so much for this
You're welcome.
important message.
Thank you. One more thing I'd like to recommend NEDA.com, National Eating Disorders Association. So NEDA.com as a resource for everyone.
Awesome. Thank you again. Thank you
Thank you,
so much.
everyone. Have a wonderful day.
You got it.